Welcome to the second video in this series, the PhoneUX Protocol. And let's jump right in, looking at the Z Fold 7 and see how it stacks up in my tests. So the first thing that I want to cover is the ergonomics, and I'm gonna start with the pinky shelf test because this is how I generally hold the phone. When holding the phone in this method, if the phone feels light, it is light for a foldable phone, and actually feels light on the finger. Obviously, after some time, it's gonna tire out, but it's very comfortable, and there are no sharp edges in the bottom to put any pressure points. The main thing about the Z Fold 7 is that it has the squared off edges, corners, which look really nice, but they could introduce a bit of a pressure point. But I don't feel it because it is actually very comfortable and not sharp like the S24 Ultra or S23 Ultra was. The other good thing about the Z Fold 7 is that it's very symmetrical, probably the most symmetrical folding phone that I've used, and so it's very similar experience on using it with either hand. I will say though that the edges on this side, the corners on this side, are a bit sharper, so this one will tire out faster than the right side. Another thing is the balance, and Samsung has this balanced really well. It has a similar balance to the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, and it's really good. Honestly, I still wish they would kind of put more in the bottom, but it's not gonna fall off your hand from the top from being too heavy, from being too top heavy, so that's good. The other thing is the width. It's at a very comfortable width where I can reach very easily. There is no wasted space when it comes to the screen or the edges here. Obviously, you do have the hinge that's gonna expand a little bit more, but it having fairly small bezels and very small edges to the phone is a very comfortable experience reaching across. The only thing that I would say is that the Z Fold 7 is very slippery, so it does add to the difficulty when reaching across. Even though the width is great, the slipperiness kind of fights against it because it wants to fall out of your hand. But besides that, the ergonomics are very comfortable, especially considering it's squared off at corners. So for the ergonomics, I would actually give it an 8 because even though it has some things that are worse than the Pixel, it has some things that are better, so it kind of balances out. The second thing that we're covering is the camera speed. When the phone is open, the camera opens up pretty fast, but I did notice that when I use the quick options, it does have a bit of a delay, a bit of a second before it pops up, and that's using either of these shortcuts, either the side button or the on-screen shortcut. There's a delay, and it's noticeable. It actually will make you wait like half a second before you're able to press the shutter button. The other thing is the shutter button delay that Samsung is kind of notorious for. They have improved it quite a bit, and it's pretty much gone in most situations, but Samsung still has the software checking that the focus is good before it takes the picture, which it could be beneficial so you don't lose or take a bad photo, but it can add, if it's not in focus, it can add a delay because it'll wait till it's in focus. You can turn it off, but I don't know if I would recommend that. But when the phone is already in focus, the shutter button doesn't really have that delay anymore. The difference is going to be that I believe it's shooting with a slower shutter speed to kind of reduce the noise in the photo, and that's going to create some motion blur when it's a moving object like a pet or even a kid that doesn't stay still for too long. The positive with Samsung is that you're able to change the layout of your modes, so you can set it up for your most used ones nearby, and that'll make it quicker. Another thing that I want to point out is, because not every phone has the other modes, but when it comes to 50 megapixel mode, it's probably the fastest one that I've seen take a picture in 50 megapixel mode. 200, no one else really has it, but look how fast it is for 200 megapixel. So it does a really good job, while other phones I think struggle with the higher res photos. For the camera speed, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Next, going to the haptics. Samsung has good haptics. There's no doubt about that one. The keyboard haptics are great. I will say it is weaker than Pixel's, and I'm sure that was intentional. It's not like the motor is rattly or weak or anything. It's just that they have a lower haptic feel to it. But Samsung has theirs set in the middle in terms of their settings, so you can actually go to their settings and either raise it or lower it to how you prefer, or take it off all the way if you want. There is, you know, volume haptics when you reach the top or the bottom, just like with the Pixel. Again, it's softer, but you could adjust that if you want. It doesn't have that deep like thump type of feel, but it's just like if you tap something, which is a different method, and it works just fine, and it works really well with this phone. So it's a great haptic feeling. I think they can actually utilize it a lot more. They use it, I think they use it on their settings and on their screen haptics a lot less than Google does, and I think they can improve that. So for the haptics, I would actually give the Z Fold 7 an 8 out of 10. Now moving on to the Immersion, the Z Fold 7 has really good sound quality. It's not going to be as deep as the regular phones, obviously, because it's a foldable, and I mean, look how thin this thing is. So you're going to lose some bass just from the space constraints. So I would consider it to be really good for a foldable. The sound, I would say, is very balanced from the top to the bottom. So again, most of the bass is coming from the bottom, and most of all the sounds come from the bottom. But I feel like the top is actually more balanced than on the Pixel. And continuing on, the outdoor experience is really good with the Z Fold 7. Both screens, inner and outer, are very bright and easy to see outdoors. And the crease was reduced a pretty good amount from the last generation and a lot from 2 generations ago. So it's a very good experience, not as distracting as it used to be. And on top of that, Samsung sells, which I have it on here, Samsung sells the screen protector that has the glare reduction. It's not the matte screen protector that kind of spreads the glare out evenly. In my opinion, it's not that great, and it messes with the picture. This is the anti-glare one that actually reduces the glare without messing with your picture too much, or almost at all. Kind of like if you had the S25 Ultra's screen on this, in a way. But even without it, it's going to be a glossy reflective screen, but it's very bright and it's easy to see outdoors for both the outer and inner. The biggest issue I think Samsung faces is that they removed the under display camera and replaced it with a punch hole. And it's not a problem because it has a better picture, but their placement is not the greatest in my opinion. So when you're using an app, it's not a big deal to the top. If you do the full screen, split screen, it'll get on top, but it doesn't really bother. The problem is that when you're watching a video, pretty much every single time, it's gonna be in the way, the punch hole camera. And to me, that's a downside of removing the under display camera, but not moving the camera itself to the corner like the other foldables are doing. So because of that, I'm rating the Immersion as a 7 out of 10 for the Z Fold 7. And then the last category is gonna be the multitasking. So obviously when you're in the slab mode of just the cover display, it's gonna be the split screen, but we're talking about Samsung here. So with Samsung, you can actually bring this out and you can have the pop-up window. So it actually gives you a third app. And then as we go to obviously the main screen, the big screen, the multitasking is one of the best out there. There's only one that I think might be better. So we'll do this side by side. You have 2 apps. With Samsung, you're not limited to 2 apps. You can do, let me just bring this one up. Now you have 3 apps. And even though this is not the most useful size, it's still going to be useful for a calculator, maybe a notes or something, or maybe just Spotify, to have Spotify there and have the controls there easily available, and then have your main screen here. So it's still going to be useful. And then we're still not even limited there because we can bring up a pop-up window. So now you have 4 apps. So because of this, I'm giving the Z Fold 7 a multitasking score of 9 out of 10. So that brings the total of all of them together to be a 39 out of 50, which is better than the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, but it's not a huge difference. Thanks for watching. If you have any differences in the scoring, let me know in the comments. That'll be fun to discuss. And stick around for another video in 2 weeks for the PhoneUX Protocol, where we will cover the S25 Edge. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.